everybody. Melissa Killeleagh here. We are live in the studio at Finger Lakes One TV. It's March 20th, 2018, first day of spring equinox. So it's a great day for setting intentions for what's coming in the next quarter. And while you're at it, why don't you let go of the things that aren't serving you? This is the Melissa Killeleagh Show. We're here today to share some news, to bring to you some positivity, stories of some of the people in my life who I consider to be our everyday heroes. These are people who really understand that, leadership is a 360-degree job, that it's, what happens from the moment you put your feet on the floor in the morning. So whether you are running a program, you are masterminding to change the world, or you're at home taking care of little ones. Myself, I am a mom. I run my business from my phone and at home. And so that is something that is near and dear to my heart, because I realize that leadership is something I show my son every day. It's something that I bring here to the studio, and it's something that I use to run my business. The other thing I love to look for is people who really live life in an authentic way, who find their own voice, their own way in this journey. And they're doing what they do with passion and purpose. So today in the studio for our first segment, we have Rhoda Overstreet-Wilson, and she is the program manager for Central New York Health Home. I met her as the board member for Auburn Enlarged City School District through a program that I'll share a little bit later on, because it's part of the ideas and inspiration I want to bring to you. But I want to thank Rhoda for coming into the studio. Thank you so much for being a woman who is making the world a better place.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
Absolutely. So, Rhoda, we met less than a couple of weeks ago. Absolutely. And we actually just finished up lunch, and I feel like we talked as if we've known each other for years.
Absolutely.
Which is great. And one of the things that I absolutely love about Rhoda is she wears probably 17 different hats, but is on the same kind of quest that I feel like I'm on in life, where it's about getting rid of all the different hats and just really living life from this very authentic way with a lot of integrity, about showing up as the same person everywhere you go. And so I would love if you'd share a little bit about the work that you do, which isn't just your job, of course. It's all of those other hats, and the passion behind it.
Absolutely. And again, thank you for having me. I have a girlfriend in Auburn who says that she is a reluctant kind of feminist. So I feel like on my journey as an adult, we go through these life cycles, and I'm probably in my middle-age life cycle. I feel like I am coming into what this 360 leadership position is about, and being very present in everything that I'm doing, which allows me to wear 17 hats. But by the time I'm done with the 17 hats, I really only want to wear one.
Right.
Only want to wear one. So not only am I the program manager for CNY Health Home Network, which is a community-based organization that helps folks link to services that they might not know are available to them, which I love. I love the idea that we are educating folks about what is present and available in their community. Because sometimes things pop up and you're just unaware that they're there. I also teach part-time sociology at Cayuga Community College, which I absolutely love 100%. I've always been curious about why people do the things they do, what motivates them. So this gives me an opportunity to kind of unpack that content with my students, and I love that they're intrigued and they're motivated to learn. In addition to that, I also sit on the Auburn School Board. This is my first year, and I am definitely in my learning curve, but the things that I'm learning I would have not learned in any other realm of any other thing that I'm doing. So I'm very grateful to be on that board. I also am the board president of the Booker T. Washington Community Center, which is, I'm a daughter of Booker T. Washington. I feel like a lot of who I am, I had instilled in me at Booker T. Washington, so always grateful for that community institution. I also sit on the Auburn Human Rights Commission. And that definitely is advocacy for people that have the perception that they've been done wrong. So I didn't know that I was going to be doing all of these things. So if you'd have said 5 years ago, if you'd asked me this question, it would have only been like one thing, because I was so consumed with what I thought my life course was supposed to be about. And then, life happens. And then when it happens, you have to go with it. And the one thing, other than being a mom and a wife, because that will always come first, I am pursuing my doctorate through St. John Fisher College. So I am almost done with my first year. So that in itself has been a huge undertaking, and not only just learning the things through my research, but learning more about myself in this process. So becoming this authentic leader, I'm actually enjoying the journey that I'm on.
Absolutely. I love it. And we share a lot of these common threads. Like one of the things that I hear when I listen to you is this deep desire for lifelong learning, and also you're a connector for sure. I mean, that's how you grabbed my attention, because we wrapped up our program and you came over and started talking to me a little bit about your program, which is one that I'm looking at. And then the other thing is this sort of idea of how you show up in all of those places, in this really deep, authentic way. And I'm grateful to be able to have more people to look to who are trying to find those answers, right? Because the journey of things like leadership and the program that you run, it's not easy, right? It's not an easy journey, especially as a woman, and you do it well. So
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm really curious, because this was something that I started to spend a lot of time on right out of my graduate program, which was going to school board meetings down in Ithaca. Ithaca in New York is a really interesting place when it comes to politics and the school district and that kind of thing. What made you decide to do that? Like, what was your drive to be part of that board? Because that's how I first came to know you, is in that role.
Actually, I was having lunch. I had a relationship with a woman who was already on the board, because we had worked together for a number of years. And she retired as a school principal, and then she ran and won her seat on the board. And every now and then we would connect. And I happened to have had lunch with her, probably this time last year. No, the year and a half ago, and she asked me if I was interested in running for the school board. Now, that immediately made me choke up, and also all the oxygen in my lungs kind of went out, because I thought, so you want me to participate in a popularity contest? So, to kind of put your name on a ballot, that's exactly what it's about. And she said, no, it's not like that. Don't think about it like that, even though it's like that. And I didn't commit to it. And I said, I will think about it, but I'm not sure, because, it would hurt my feelings if I didn't get any votes. So I, kind of think, I want to protect myself a bit. And then I got to thinking, my kids got a pretty good education in Auburn. And I was engaged and present. But I also felt like there were things that their counselors should have known, and because I was engaged and present, they got that from me. I don't know if they were getting that from other parents, and I felt that this knowledge that I had about how to engage people, how to allow people to break their barriers down, for you to get what you need out of them to ultimately help the student. I thought, this is what I'm going to bring to that board, because I am so passionate about education. If our babies do not graduate high school, they are behind the rest of their lives. So that is ultimately what kind of allowed me to push myself forward and kind of throw my name into the hat. And we kind of, all three of us, there were two other folks that went for the board seats. We went uncontested, but I still learned a lot in that process, talking to people about what made me passionate and why would I want to be on the school board. But I'm always going to be a strong supporter of education and how we can make it better. So ultimately, that was the reason.
Yeah, it's so great, and it's tied into the story I want to talk about, which is like meeting through the program First Amendment, First Vote,
Yes.
which we'll share in a little bit. Before we do that, though, I would love for you to talk a little bit more about the things that really drive you. Like, what fuels you to get out of bed in the morning and do the things that you do and be as involved and passionate as you are in life? I mean, you just spoke a little bit to, what drives you to be part of the school board, but just in life in general, I see so often, these choices that we make, whether as women, as leaders, to step into this new realm or to take on this new responsibility and beautifully multitask 100 different things, but it takes a lot of passion behind it. So talk more about that.
I was raised in the church, so I have a a profound sense of faith. And I think even from a little girl, because I would sing in the choir and I taught Sunday school class, I was kind of always kind of pushed to the forefront of things. And then I would be able to turn to my cousins, because we were all a part of the church. And then I would notice that there was this an awe from me, but not necessarily an awe, because when I was a young girl, I didn't have the language to be able to describe it. So what I discovered was I was a mentor to my own family, and I was someone that they could look up to, and I felt like I can't let them down. Growing up not just in the church but also in profound poverty, there aren't many folks that are doing well in those communities. So oftentimes it would be family members trying to look at other family members who are clawing their way out of the bucket to get out of that situation. And I just thought, I can't let my family down. I have to be the change for my entire family that I need, that I want to see, not just in my community, but in the world. So this is the path that I'm pretty confident I'm supposed to be on. And that's what I was thinking as a young woman. Now that I'm in my 40s, I am certain 100%. So what drives me ultimately to get out of bed and do what I do every day is, currently in my community, there aren't many people that look like me, that are out talking about the things that impact our community, that are running for different boards, that are representative in other respects in our community. So about a year and a half ago, when I decided that I would kind of commit to other boards, it was that feeling that if I can do something that would inspire someone else and not let them down, then I would be doing my part. So I want it to be what other folks aspire to do. In terms of the drive, if Rhoda can do it, I can do it.
Right. I love that. And, I think one of my favorite colleagues and mentors says it so wonderfully, and I'm pretty sure you share this one as well. Gwen Weber-McLeod always talks about leading at the intersection of race and gender.
Absolutely.
Right. And what that does is just really brings what is critical to our world, which is more voices to the table. Right. So I'm grateful that you do what you do, because it's necessary. And in doing that, as you bring more voices to the table, the other passion that, I know we share is that passion, and especially teaching sociology, sharing stories, right, and getting people to relate. And so that's another thing that I think about when it comes to people like you who are doing incredible things out in the world. What are the stories that have inspired you? Who are the people that you relate to? Who are your leaders that you look up to?
Well, first I'll think about the other women in my family. So my grandmother was a migrant worker from Georgia. And what happened coincidentally was there was this this convoy of buses that were in Georgia, and they were going to the capital of New York State. So Auburn is clearly not the capital of New York State. So my family ended up in Auburn, New York, And my grandmother has worked tirelessly since then, being the head of the family, holding down 2 or 3 jobs, also instilling us in that faith in us that you still need to, regardless of how many jobs you have or what you're doing, you still need to be respectable, you still need to have these morals. We were the working poor. So I look first to my grandmother and how she did all of that with only a 5th grade education. She navigated this system, and coming from Georgia when she was only 17, with 2 kids at that time. So I'm thinking, all of this strength in this one woman, it has to be generational. And then my mother, who worked for 35 years at the Auburn Community Hospital, working her way up after getting her GED to pass her CNA boards, and she loved that. It was so fulfilling. And I seen my mother work overtime. My mother just kind of give up things for herself and then make sure that all 5 of her kids had it. So I thought, yes, that's just another generation. So that has to be instilled in me. And then when I look externally, definitely Gwen Weber-McLeod, because she is a huge part of Booker T. Washington when I was a young girl. And I remember her always saying, Rhoda, you can be whatever it is you want to be. Rhoda, you ask so many questions. And she kind of tells that story now. And I do remember asking a lot of questions. I was very curious. But I feel like externally, she was the first person to tell me that whatever it is that I wanted to do, I could do it. So she is definitely one of those women that I look at and think, when I get to 60, I want to be 60 and fabulous, just like Gwen Weber-McLeod. I want to be driven just like Gwen. I want to have my stuff together just like Gwen. And since knowing her, I know that she's doing that work every day. Yeah. And that's an inspiration. I want to do that work every day.
Yeah. Yeah.
So those are like my tribe of women that constantly inspire me.
So important to have that tribe, right? And to have those people who not only, like, I love how you share that your family really taught you to know it from an internal place, but that, like, having even just one person who really gave you that message from the outside, saying, like, yeah, you got this, go do it.
Absolutely.
Right? So I've been working with Gwen recently in what I hear her refer to as, like, her legacy building years, right? Like, so one of the things that she's working on is right here in the studio. She is the host for the Leadership Journey, living and leading in and on purpose. And so that's the next thing I want to talk about with you, which is, like, fast forward, in life and looking back, what is it that you would love for your legacy to be about?
Well, that's a deep question. Let me fast forward 20 years. Answering this question right now in my 40s, I would say that I want people to remember me not just by the work that I've done, but I want them to remember me from my interactions with them. It's really important to me, because of my life lessons, that people leave interacting with me at a better place. I never want people to leave confused or wounded in any kind of way because I wasn't an uplifter to them. I want people to talk when they remember me, to say, I didn't have a bad interaction with Rhoda. In fact, I continually felt like she always had her hands on my back. And like I was saying, because of my prior experiences with that, I'm going to constantly talk about this life cycle, and it's always going to be about these educational cycles. But if I didn't really kind of process the things that I went through in my 30s, I wouldn't be able to talk about those kind of interactions. So I want folks to remember me from our interactions.
Well, you certainly already left me with that, right? From our first meeting, which was, there was a sincere investment in wanting to share with me some of the information and possibilities for this doctorate program that you're part of, that I'm looking at. So thank you. And it's interesting because how you started your answer was, okay, well, this is me in my 40s answering this question. But just as we know, like, you know, in our 40s, we're different than our 30s, we're different than our 20s. You know, that question will probably continue, the answer will continue to evolve over time and be informed by all of the incredible experiences going on now. So thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
I'm grateful for your time here as a woman who is truly making the world a better place with all that you do out and about in the community. And I'm also grateful for the time that we took before to really learn a little bit more about the journey leading up to here. I feel like it's so important for our audience to know too, like when we come to the table and we talk about things like leadership and we talk about things like being committed to an idea or being concerned about social justice, you know, this doesn't necessarily mean it's something that was lifelong or born with you. Like in a moment's notice, you could make a decision that there's something in your heart you want to pursue, because we talked about sharing the fact that like the last couple of years of each of our lives has really been more of that deep dive to figure out how to live life more authentically. So thank you everyone for listening, for viewing. This is Rhoda Overstreet-Wilson, and you can find her on Facebook and send her a message and let her know just what a wonderful woman she is. Next, we have an interview with a man who is making a difference in the world, and that is the founder and executive director of the Good Life Philanthropic Youth Foundation, Hasan Stephens. Incredible man who is really using a very unique model to uplift and transform the experience of our inner city youth. So we're going to leave you with the recorded interview. Here we go. All right, everybody, it's Melissa Killeleagh Show. We're not live in the studio. We're actually recording this interview the Sunday before. Tuesday will be airing. And I'm here today with Hasan Stephens. Super excited to share his story with you. Hasan is coming on to really represent a man making a difference in our community and speaks to my heart with a lot of the great work that he's doing. So what I'd love to share with you today is a little bit about him. So Hasan is the founder and executive director at the Good Life Philanthropic Youth Foundation, which is what we'll be focused on today. He's also the founder and CEO at That Good Media and Marketing. He is an adjunct professor at Cortland and has studied business administration and African American studies. So Hasan, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm super pumped.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I'm grateful to Gwen Weber-McLeod for making the connect. She was originally the one who said, hey, you need to reach out to him because this is someone doing some good work. Like a couple of years ago when I first started following her You Can't Fail conferences.
Right.
So tell us a little bit more about your background and the work that you're doing now. The Good Life Foundation definitely speaks to me, so I'm sure it will speak to our viewers too.
Yeah, well, so I'm originally from New York City. I came up here from the Bronx, New York, and came here to go to school. So, the Finger Lakes was an interesting area for me because it wasn't as culturally diverse as New York City. And so it took me a while to kind of gain my bearings, but, I came up here and got entrenched in the community. And I graduated from Hobart and William Smith colleges for undergrad, and then eventually settled in Syracuse because I started doing radio and TV there. So I joined Clear Channel, which is now known as iHeartMedia, and started doing radio. And so that really was my gateway and opening into working with youth.
Yeah. Fantastic.
Yeah.
So Geneva, New York. Yes. I got you. I just did an event there last week. There was a group that organized, the Geneva Women's Assembly organized a strike on International Women's Day to bring people in the community out around women's equality issues, and equal pay, all of that kind of stuff. But what really stole my heart was this incredible group of students that came from the college who took the streets.
Yeah.
So the police were very taken aback and sort of, what the heck's going on here, because they had no shame about it, and they had a message to share, which is that equality matters.
Right. It's interesting because, I still have a long way to go as a man. I say that openly and honestly because I think we live in a society that that automatically socializes men to think a certain way, right? But one of the best things that ever happened to me was going to school at Hobart and William Smith colleges, because it is one of the schools that focuses on women's rights. And so that was the beginning of my education as a man and understanding, the struggle that happened in Seneca Falls, the struggle that still exists, right, for women. And so without my education in women's rights, I think I would be a completely different type of man. And I still constantly search, on a daily basis. Some of the work that we actually do with The Good Life is in trying to reshape the thinking of the young boys in terms of their engagement with women, as well as the young girls that we work with as well. So, I appreciated the coordinate system at Hobart and William Smith, the education that I received from professors like Lee Quimby, who was, a gay feminist who was very proud and really educated a ton of students at Hobart and William Smith colleges on women's rights. So that was a blessing.
I love to hear that, and I'm grateful that you shared that for sure. I'd love also for you to share more about the vision and the mission that you're bringing forth with the Good Life Foundation.
Yeah.
So can you share that with us?
Yeah. So the Good Life was started primarily because I grew up poor. I grew up originally the idea was Nouveau Riche. I wanted to start this since I was young. I wanted to start this organization called Nouveau Riche. So NU, which stood for Nubian or Black, VO for the voice, and Riche was French for rich, the Black voice of the rich. And so it came from this concept and idea that, having struggled, having gone hungry and experienced poverty in the projects in the Bronx, I never wanted another kid to not be familiar and understand money management and finance. And then as I got older and was exposed to the criminal justice system and various different populations, I recognized, this is not just a Black thing. There were poor whites, there were Latinos, there were other groups and youth that were suffering from poverty and living in the inner city and learning how to socially, overcome some hurdles. And so the concept was really, what will it take in order to simply live a good life? And so that's what we do at The Good Life. Our motto is that a good life begins with real connections. So we serve as connectors. We connect youth to opportunity and access. We connect youth to experiences that they ordinarily would not have been exposed to, in hopes that they are able to move on and be successful and live a good life. We do that by focusing on 4 various aspects, which is life skills, right? What I found is that a lot of the youth that we deal with, before they can start thinking about financial literacy or entrepreneurship, they're dealing with some very serious social hurdles and obstacles. And so helping them kind of understand their identity and understand who they are in relation to these obstacles was paramount. And so we do life skills, financial literacy, and asset management, right? And so the asset management and building is a very important aspect, because oftentimes we teach poor communities about financial literacy and don't teach them strategies on how to actually accumulate the finances to manage, right? So looking from a cultural standpoint and actually giving them tangible strategies to overcome poverty. And then the third pillar is entrepreneurship. And so for me, one of the reasons why, as the founder, I wanted to implement entrepreneurship training and education in Good Life was because entrepreneurship literally saved my life. When I, growing up in hip hop culture and learning the elements of hip hop and taking up DJing as one of my hobbies turned businesses, it was one of the only things when I didn't have a job and when I couldn't eat that allowed me to put food on the table and to stay on my feet. And actually, it was one of the things that the thing that allowed me to fund this organization before we had any type of donors, funding, or grants from major foundations. It was coming out of my pocket. My DJ money was what funded this, so it was a big help. So teaching kids about entrepreneurship and ways in which they can survive through that. And then the last thing is we recently added on this month was health and wellness, because it comes full circle, right? In order to have a good life, you have to be healthy. You have to understand how to maintain and be healthy. And we want to uplift the culture all together, right, across the board in terms of how we engage life to have a good life.
Yeah. So I think it's really unique, the model that you use. I think those pillars are critical to success today, right?
Yeah.
It's like, whenever I think about the nonprofit world and how, and how it exists to really bridge the gap between what's happening in society and where government is helping, but there's always there's the bridge that's needed, right?
Yeah.
So what I find to be really interesting is many of those bridges, so to say, that exist today are not keeping up with the times. And they're not paying attention to what's actually happening in the communities that they're trying to serve. Right? So what you're talking about here is like real tangible work that can be done to make sure that you're elevating the community from.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Yeah, and so it's funny. Like that's one of our niches. That's what makes us unique, and it also makes us effective, right? Mm-hmm. So when you look at, again, it's kind of like what I mentioned with financial literacy, is you're educating a community on the bare basics. Mm-hmm. This is how you have a bank account, you open it here, this is how you maintain it, but yet you haven't taken into consideration the hurdles that prevent them from opening up the bank account. You haven't taken into consideration the perspectives that people may hold about money or banks as to why they don't want to open a bank account, right? And so everything that we do, our entire approach is from a cultural standpoint. It's, and we do focus on African-American culture, Black African diaspora culture, as well as, Latino culture. What are the cultural indicators and messages that are telling us, don't put your money in the bank, don't trust the bank, right? Because historically, we have been slighted by banks, or something has happened that says, you know what, money is better left in the mattress, right? Where we can see it, it's close to us, and we can have more control over it, which actually doesn't effectively work that way, right? But those are the things that we can think about. And that's across the board, right? Engagement in entrepreneurship. And how do we think about business? How do we think about life in general from those populations? I find that so many different organizations are disconnected. They want to serve certain populations, but they don't understand the populations, and they haven't taken the time to understand the populations. And so that's what makes us effective, is that our clients want to come to us because of how we're doing it, particularly because we're serving the ages 13 to 24. We utilize hip hop culture and youth culture to kind of entice them, but also use it as a vehicle for understanding, so that they can associate and they're more familiar, I should say, with the concepts when we introduce them.
Yeah, it's so moving. Like, I'm so glad you're doing the work that you're doing. This is what always intrigues me, because I know it's not easy work, right?
Right.
It's easy work. So what inspires you every day to get up and keep doing the work? What motivates you? Who are the leaders who inspire you? What keeps you going?
I think what keeps me going is my self-interest. I was those kids. And had someone not stepped into my life and exposed me to different opportunities, or given me an opportunity, connected me to some access or a different experience, I probably would have a very different outcome. I grew up in Edenwald Projects in the Bronx, and I had 3 friends that all of us were doing well in elementary school. And what you find is that if you go into inner city elementary schools, the kid that will eventually be the person convicted on a criminal charge, or the kid who's dropping out of high school, typically they're doing okay in elementary school, right? And even though, don't get me wrong, there's a huge need at that level, an elementary school level, in terms of working with kids. But I see kids who formerly were engaged and doing well in elementary school, and as the time goes on, they start to say, what is this getting me? Right? Where am I going? I'm not guided. I don't have anyone showing me why it's important for me to go to school, right? We never connect the why to these kids. And then they get led astray. And so for me, someone was able to step in at my elementary school level and allow me to fulfill a very different path than the three good friends that I had, Jimmy, Marvin, and Kevin, who one was shot up, the other one was arrested for selling drugs, and the other one was arrested for being in a house where a young woman was sexually assaulted, and changed the trajectory of their lives almost immediately. Now, you're talking about four best friends that were already hanging out on a daily basis. Had I not been steered in a different direction, I wonder where I would be today,
Right. I love it. Yeah. So you get to be that catalyst for so many other young people, right?
Absolutely. And the other thing is that I love what I do. And so in the spirit of entrepreneurship, if you wake up doing what you love for the rest of your life, you'll never work another day in your life. And I kind of feel that because working with youth is something that I've always wanted to do. And I couldn't have it better than working with youth through hip hop and educating. So I'm kind of like a natural teacher in a lot of ways, which I picked up from my mother. And, I enjoy what I do. So I rush. When other people are dreading going to work on Mondays, I rush to go to work on Mondays. In fact, I very rarely stop working. I'm 7 days a week. I'm doing something related to the organization.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel you on that.
Yeah.
Because it's true. When you love what you do, you never work a day in your life, but yet we tend to be the ones who are working every day. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So how can people help? We're obviously going to post the website on our podcast, but how can people help? I know that, you guys have been around since 2009, but you really just incorporated in 2012. So I can imagine you're probably looking for more funding for programming and volunteers, but tell me what is your immediate need and long-term too?
Yeah. So, first thing I would say, we are a young organization. And to someone, they say, well, 2009, it was really me doing some work with youth personally. And I was taking my time in building this organization because I wanted to see the ins and outs as well as I wanted to see the shortcomings, right? So what was that foundation that needed to be built in order for us to be long lasting and sustainable as an organization? A lot of that was me, because when I stepped into the nonprofit world, I really didn't know anything about running a nonprofit organization. I kind of picked it up and latched on to amazing mentors like Gwen Weber McLeod, and I latched on to people that were smarter than me in this realm and asked a lot of questions. I also went to a lot of training classes. So we really didn't get started and moving as an organization until I'd say about 2013, 2014. A lot of that initial time was spent working with a very small population, a handful of kids, and really building the foundation and the systems of the organization. So as a fairly new organization, we are still looking for funding streams. People, it's tough to ask for money, but capacity costs. And so in order for us to reach the populations that we do, in order for us to increase the amount of kids that we can reach, it costs money. So yes, that's one. Also a number of different ways that people can get involved. From the giving side, one of the things that we found that was very successful in terms of moving youth along the journey in the path is incentives. So whether they're gift cards, that we can say, hey, you're doing a great job. Here's a gift, a $25 gift card. You can, and what's crazy is that, we deal with some youth that are in severe poverty, that a gift card to Burger King to get some food, while it's not the healthiest, to them, they have access to it and they don't go hungry, right? And so, it's not always a situation where we can say, hey, let's buy some groceries and you can cook it at home, because sometimes the living situations are not situations where you can cook at all, right? So we have times just giving kids small incentives and say, thank you for doing what you're doing. Oh my gosh, you went to school all week this week and, we increased your attendance. Hey, here's a gift card. So those types of things are always great. On the volunteer side, they need people who care about them, who are successful, who are connected, to simply come into their lives. be around and let them see you. So we have workshops where you can meet our youth, and there are tons of volunteer opportunities. There's also opportunities for our youth to be engaged in a apprenticeship, as you said, or internship, to give them that exposure to new opportunities, as well as jobs. So we started building a network of companies that are offering our children jobs. The Sky Armory in downtown Armory Square has opened up a few positions for our kids, as well as DeWitt Cleaners in DeWitt, New York. And so we're looking to continue to build those companies and corporations that are willing to say, I have X number of positions, and we will literally work with you for your youth to come work, after vetting, to come into these positions. So there are a ton of opportunities, from mentoring to simply just being around.
Okay. I love it. And I'm already thinking of some companies and organizations to reach out to. So yeah. All right. Well, so one final question.
Sure.
What is the legacy that you want to leave on this planet?
Wow.
That's a big one.
Tough question. One of the things that a lot of people don't know is that we're in the process of trying to purchase a building. And this building is going to be very unique in terms of how we utilize it. So it's going to be a hip hop center for youth entrepreneurship. And so as a legacy, what I would like to leave is the power of hip hop music and culture to change. When you mentioned that I was an adjunct professor at SUNY Cortland, I teach the evolution of hip hop culture from a socio-political standpoint and educate my students on a daily basis how hip hop is a powerful tool for change. It's the #1 global genre of music and culture across the world. Right. It is one of the biggest and most impactful genres here in the United States. It's also a culture that has bridged communities, bridged backgrounds and populations. And you can go to England, France, Japan, and find a hip hop community, people that love it, experience and celebrate it. So it can do a lot in terms of bringing people together and also uplifting people, right, from a political standpoint. So that said, this building is going to be a mecca of hip hop culture that will allow youth to understand entrepreneurship and give them tangible skill sets for them to take into the real world. And, if it was possible to eliminate poverty, great. But we know that that's not necessarily going to be the key. But if we can teach people how to maybe make additional revenue or income simply with the skills and talents that were God-given, then that's something that I would love to leave behind. And I hope that this building will outlast my life and be around in the central New York area, particularly Syracuse, where it's the #1 city in the United States with the concentration of poverty amongst African Americans and Latinos. Let's give them something that they can use. That's what I want to leave.
I love it. Thank you, Hasan. I've so appreciated the time that you took with us today. And, I'm positive that the people who are watching will find ways to connect with you at some point in time to be able to be a resource to help bring that legacy to fruition, because it's something that's incredibly needed in our area. So thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. So thank you, everyone. All right. So that was Hasan Stephens, founder and executive director from the Good Life Philanthropic Youth Foundation. I'm sure just from watching, you can see the passion and purpose that he has for what he's doing. And also, you were here listening to Rhoda Overstreet-Wilson a little bit earlier today about the passion and purpose in her life. And that's what I'm here to bring you. I'm here to bring you stories of people I consider to be everyday heroes, people who understand that leadership is something that happens from the moment your feet hit the floor in the morning. And, and people who are really out there living life in a truly authentic way. So I thank you for taking the time to listen today. I want to leave you with a little bit of inspiration around a program that happened over the last month. So between February and just a couple weekends ago, 55 young girls went through a new program that was founded by Melina Carnatelli here in Auburn, New York, called First Amendment, First Vote. And thanks to an incredible team of people, including Rhoda Overstreet-Wilson, who was part of a panel of women who are in public service, these girls were able to come together for programming in both the Finger Lakes and Buffalo, New York, to learn a little bit more about civic engagement, about the history of this area, about the legacy of the coming of women's rights, and about the issues that still face us and why they need to see themselves as leaders in our future. And I had the privilege and the honor of being able to participate, being able to meet a lot of these young women who were absolutely incredible. And through the work that I do with my network marketing company, I was also able to help sponsor some of the cost of the program through the Auburn Charitable Foundation. So thank you, Auburn Charitable Foundation, if anyone was watching. But as a result of the program, there are 55 young women out there who now have that seed planted, who now see the possibility of a future career in public office, whether it's, there was one young girl who said, "I will be the president of the United States." And I believe her. She was incredible. And there were so many young women there who understood that something like being involved as a board member on their local school district or running for a town council position is something that truly matters and is a way to bring their voice to the table. So I just wanted to leave you with a little bit about that. I'm sure in coming months you'll be learning more about First Amendment, First Vote. This is a project that was also sponsored by the local Women March in Seneca Falls group that recently organized the 15,000 person-wide celebration, march, and rally of really pushing for equal rights for all different issues across the board when it comes to women. And in future months, what I think you'll be hearing is how this model for First Amendment, First Vote is growing and will be statewide and eventually across our country. So in coming years, I do believe that we will see this program roll out in places like Washington, D.C., and then in some of the other major cities in our country. So the last thing I want to leave you with is a quote that really struck me. I'm working with an incredible group of women internationally in a mastermind where we are working together on something called the Master Key System. This book was actually initially written as a correspondence course in the early 1900s and was used by a lot of our early greats, people like Henry Ford, and a lot of people know the name Napoleon Hill, who wrote the book Think and Grow Rich. They use this course to really advance themselves as leaders in their own industry and just as thought leaders in the world. And this one quote that I read just yesterday, because this book is meant to be read like one chapter a week for 24 weeks. This one quote hit me. And I'm going to say woman instead of man, but just so you can get both. The woman who looks within instead of without cannot fail to make use of the mighty forces which will eventually determine his course in life, her course in life, and so bring her into vibration with all that is best, strongest, and most desirable. So literally what Charles Hanel is laying the groundwork for here is to let us all know that the incredible world that we're looking for outside of us is actually within us, and we have the ability to bring it forth through all that we do, through the way that we show up in the world, which is part of what I love to honor and share with you here on the Melissa Killeleagh Show. So thank you so much for watching. I look forward to seeing you next month. Happy spring. See you soon.